So in the last two videos, we've been talking a lot about the shift and how to make the paradigm shift, what the paradigm shift is, and why making this paradigm shift is so crucial. But we also mentioned this peripheral skill called the theater consciousness. And this is going to be a video I'm really, really excited to make because this SOC, as we call it, has been one of the most groundbreaking principles that my clients have learned to support not only the shift, but to support everything else as you see in this video. So you can see this client here, he dedicates his champagne moment, a lot of it to SOC, to him learning SOC. And you can tell a lot of my clients are really obsessing about SOC. SOC has everything to do with spotting voices, spotting layers, how they fuck you, etc., right? People using SOC as a lifestyle all the time. So there's a lot of talk around SOC, and I do not see anybody else in the industry talking about SOC, which is a massive, massive shame. So I want to create this video, and I'm really, really excited about this video. So please stick around to the end because you don't want to miss a thing in this video right here. Now, I was hoping I never needed to make this word of caution, but I need to say something before we get to the meat of this video. As you know, the reason why I'm creating these videos, guys, these more in-depth videos, is because I realized that because we have a quota of the number of clients that we take in every month, a lot of you guys are applying and a lot of you guys are not getting into the program, or at least not yet. And maybe some of you cannot get into the program because you can't afford it. I don't know what reason you have for not being in the program. But one of my biggest fears is when I do these in-depth videos is people twisting and bending my videos to be used for bad instead of good. Or when people underestimate the power of these internal shifts and the frameworks and how much it can change your life. So just to show you a bit about why I'm saying this, I had a crazy story that happened to me a few months back. So this is a person who is not in the program yet, but he kept emailing me and messaging me saying that, hey, I understand Bulletproof Vest. I understand what you're saying. I understand how to do it. I'm doing it correctly. Everything is going great. But I got a very shocking email from his wife one day saying that, hey, my husband has been watching your videos. We need to do a call because he is very, very abusive. Well, so we scheduled a FaceTime call. Guess what? She showed up to the call with a big black eye. So here's the guy who was learning all the stuff that I was teaching him for my free content, and he was using it for a lot of bad. And his standard of what being bulletproof means, for example, is not really the right way of being bulletproof. It's really the surviving way of being bulletproof and not the thriving way of being bulletproof. And recently, guys, I've been getting a lot of emails from people who are saying they've been listening to these longer form videos and they're liking it, but in the content of their email, they show a lot of misunderstandings of bulletproof vest, of paradigm shifting, and they're showing a lot of blindness to a lot of their flaws as well. A great example of this is people saying that, hey, I am trying to be bulletproof, but they're really taking it in a surviving way, not in a thriving way. So I just want to make sure that, guys, please do not make me regret this. Please do not twist and bend the principles. And I want you guys to just remember a few things here. Understanding this stuff, while I can go deep in these videos, is a conceptual understanding, but you're not getting that experiential mastery. So it's almost like if you're trying to become a basketball player, this is almost like watching Kobe or taking courses, online courses on basketball. Sure, you may understand basketball, but you may not have experientially mastered it. It's one thing to understand bulletproof vest. It's one thing to understand paradigm shift. It's one thing to be a master experientially at it. And this is not like learning hard skills. When you learn hard skills, I can point to you on the board and say, hey, you and I can both agree that those are the issues you are facing right now on the board, is tangible, etc. But when it comes to soft skills like this, like emotions, we need to cut through a lot of blind spots, a lot of denial. So if you look at a lot of my clients, for example, they will talk a lot about blind victim, their blindness, important solution, hiding in plain sight. They talk about the blindness again. One of the best things we do in the program is to catch through your blindness, your blind spots, your denial, your lack of acceptance, etc. Right? So you guys, when you are listening to these videos, I want you to understand that you need to be very honest with yourself and you need to look deep because you're going to have a lot more blind spots than you think. Number 3, again, remember, there's this thing called the wrongfully certain trap. It's when we are so certain that something we're doing is right, something we're thinking of is right, but it's wrong. It's actually causing more damage. And I think if you look back to a lot of what you guys did, of how you guys got here in the first place, was because you fell for the wrongfully certain trap where you thought doing certain things was correct, but it's actually wrong. A great example of this is when people misunderstand how to create safety, and they think that mansplaining or over-explaining or justifying their behavior creates safety, but actually that is what we call paradox of logic, and that actually destroys more safety. So that's another one where I see a lot of people thinking something is right, they double down on that, but doubling down on that just creates what we call more hemorrhages. So please do be careful of this, and do not gamble with your time here, right? Time is a resource that you will never get back again. So if you spend a lot of time learning the wrong things, twisting and bending my videos and learning the wrong things and taking away the wrong things from it, you are wasting time running in the wrong direction, and it's time that you will never get back. So remember, you have one life. Please don't waste it. Now, again, I realize that a lot of you have either cannot financially afford the program, or you have not made the cut or made the quota for the program just yet. But again, remember that the program is there for a reason, where we have designed the program to allow you to really experientially master something, to really master soft skills, to see through your blind spots, etc. So I'm not going to go belabor too much about this. I left the video up top for you here if you want to watch it, about me talking about the program, etc. But if you cannot join the program, guys, remember, I made this videos to give the people who cannot go to the program some deeper resource that you can use. So please, right, comment, please engage, please ask questions. Do not allow yourself to twist and bend the videos just because you don't want to comment or ask questions. Please do not do that. I do not want another example of this black eye story. No more of this, okay, guys? So with that said, let's get started with what is a state of consciousness. So really quick definition. This is really the place in your mind where one achieves a state of pure observation, pure awareness, pure acceptance of what one observes, that is free of any and all value judgments. So this word, state of consciousness, is not something I created, but it's something that philosophers and scientists have been trying to define and locate for a long time. I think if you look at every single philosopher, every single spiritual leader, every single scientist even, they have a very different definition of this. They have a very different idea where the location is, but we all know it's there. This is the moment in your life where you are able to see something good or something bad that is happening in your life, and you're not observing it with any value judgments. You're not saying it's good or bad, but you're just kind of going, interesting, that happened. It's a place of pure acceptance. So, for example, something bad happens to you. Recently, I had a death in the family, and while I felt sad about it and very depressed about it, I just went, I'm depressed, I'm sad, and this thing just happened. And as much as I like to deny it, fight it, resist it, wish it didn't happen, it already happened. And it's just that pure acceptance, that pure feeling of letting go. That is what we call the state of consciousness, when you can see life in just the objective observation of life. Now, I'm not going to get too stuck in the semantics here and debate definitions, because this is an understanding that you must actually feel. You cannot really conceptualize this. In fact, you'll learn later, if you try to conceptualize this, you will actually get out of the feeling. Now, as you learn, the reason why the SOC is so crucial goes back to the saying, the more you resist something, the more it will persist. So the only thing you need to know about state of consciousness is that it's a state of pure observation, and it's not a striving process, it's a falling process. So for those of you who are not familiar with striving versus falling, in life, we got two different types of outcomes. We get striving outcomes, we get falling outcomes. Striving outcomes is like when you're lifting weights, for example. The more willpower you exert, the more likely you will get to the outcome. But there's a lot of parts in life where it's falling. Falling asleep is a good one. The more willpower you exert to falling asleep, the less likely you are to fall asleep. When you look at anything to do with emotions, it's always a falling outcome. So SOC, though, is the best way to start the process of shifting, but also the best way to end the process of shifting. So Let's investigate further, because as we talk about the different principles here behind SOC, you will realize, guys, that you have felt SOC more than you think. Now, the only thing is that when you are in SOC right now, you don't really know that you're in SOC. And so you don't really know how to manufacture and how to replicate that moment. The idea, again, is that we want to replicate and be in SOC. It's a place you fall to, SOC, as much as possible in your 24-hour day. Okay, we want to make it as much of a lifestyle as possible. So this replicability of it is going to be very, very key. But let's keep going here. So let's understand SOC deeper by asking ourselves, why is SOC so important? Why is that so crucial? So number one is we need to understand that what we call the purple giraffe paradox. Now, I want to start here by telling you to not think about a purple giraffe. What are you thinking about? Most likely a purple giraffe. Now, when in your life do you ever think about a purple giraffe? Never. Why the fuck would you ever think about a purple giraffe? The only reason why you thought of a purple giraffe is because I told you to not think of it. So again, this is why the more you try to remove, resist, or suppress emotions, the more that emotion will persist. If you are angry, for example, and you tell yourself, please do not be angry, you are going to find yourself feeling more angry, because now not only are you angry about the thing, but you are angry about the fact that you're angry now, right? So you're creating more persistence here. So the more you try to not think about something, the more you actually think about that thing. And this is why a lot of approaches to emotional management and mastery fails. Because if you look at a lot of approaches to emotional mastery, is that when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling depressed, when you're feeling whatever, most of the approaches is to tell yourself to not feel that. Why feeling that is not okay. But doing that gives the opposite effect. And it's also why a lot of approaches to, let's say, addiction recovery or addiction removal fails as well. Often people use the fear tactic. People use when people are addicted to smoking cigarettes, for example, which I've been smoking since I was 14, guys. And I've been trying to kick this habit for a big part of my life by telling myself to not smoke and why smoking is bad, the fear tactic. But the more I tell myself to not smoke, the more I actually want to smoke, the more I am tempted to smoke. It's a very paradoxical, mind-bending concept, but this is again going back to the striving and falling principle. In order for you to master your emotions, or if you want to get rid of addictions, you need to fall. You need to learn how to fall and learn the process for falling and not striving. And it's why so many men stay stuck in this very endless cycle of mistakes of overpromising and guilt. So I talk to a lot of men now, and they have the same cycle. And I was in this cycle too, where I would have some anger management issues, and I would find myself in the middle of an outburst, for example. And in the middle of that, I wake up and I go, oh, shoot, I shouldn't do that. And I promised my wife and back then girlfriend, I would say, you know what? I'll do better next time. I'll control myself better next time. But the next time something happens, because of the purple giraffe paradox, I accidentally intensify my feelings, and I find myself exploding again. And when I explode again, I feel the guilt. The guilt leads me to another overpromise, and so on and so on and so on. But deep down, you just don't believe that you can do it anymore. Deep down, you believe there's something wrong with you now. That's a really bad cycle to be in. And you'll only be stuck in the cycle, as you'll learn in a bit, when you are out of your seat of consciousness. Okay? And a great example of this, guys, is, if you look at your anger, for example, when are the moments when you snap out of your anger? The moments when you snap out of your anger are the moments when you realize you kind of like disassociate yourself from your anger, and you realize, I'm angry right now. I shouldn't be angry right now. Or I'm angry right now. And you just observe that anger, observe your angered state and the ridiculousness that it is for what it is. And you just observe that. Once you can dissociate yourself like that, that's when you snap out of your anger, if you notice. That dissociation, guys, is actually what SOC feels like. And principle number 2 to understand why SOC is so crucial, is the curse of spontaneous thoughts. I want to do a fun thought experiment with you here. Let's say, okay, you're driving a car. Imagine you're driving a car, and suddenly you think about something that upsets you. Okay. Now, that thing that you thought of that upset you, where did the thought come from? Did you try to think of that thought? Or did the thoughts just seem to spawn from nothingness? I want you to pause there and think about this for a sec, right? A thought comes into your head, spontaneous thought comes into your head. Do you try to think about that thought, or the thought just came out of nowhere? Right? And this is really the danger with spontaneous thoughts. And many of us, after working with a lot of clients here, you have too many negative thoughts for any shifting to be effective. And if I talk to my clients, right, what they say is, it sounds good in theory, the shifting emotions, but sometimes a feeling can feel so complex, can be brought upon by so many layers of thought, other feelings, but it can feel like you're trying to catch 100 tennis balls at once. Like, if you look at the process of shifting, it's really catching a tennis ball and shifting that from negative to positive, right? But what if instead of one tennis ball, you got two hands here, you are given 100 tennis balls, too many thoughts at once, too many things that upset you at once? Well, you can catch two, but that's like, try to pour water out of the Titanic here with a bucket, right? It feels like you're fighting a losing battle. There was a scene from 300, you can tell, where Leonidas was like standing like this, and then they shot all the arrows, right? It can feel like that, where okay, I can catch maybe like I catch two of the arrows, but there's too many arrows. Or it can feel like a whack-a-mole game where as soon as you shift one, another one comes up. Shift one, another one comes up, and it never ends. And we've worked with key neuroscientists in this field, some of whom are actually in the program, interestingly, to help with this. Now, this is actually a very, very interesting topic that I'm not going to go too deep into. But the main question we're trying to answer here is that how do spontaneous thoughts form? So really, what we come to understand is that dopamine is a key role in this. So dopamine, a lot of you guys know it as the pleasure chemical, but it's actually not just the pleasure chemical. It's actually more of the motivation chemical. So how it works is this. So I want you to imagine here that, let's say you have formed this affinity or this addiction to a cheeseburger, to eating cheeseburger. You love the taste of cheeseburgers, right? So let's say you get hungry. When you get hungry, what happens is that you start to form what we call dopamine cravings. When that dopamine cravings form, your body will naturally spawn a thought. And that thought is designed, it's like your body's defense mechanism, your body's survival instinct to get you to some motivation or desire. Because when a spontaneous thought about that cheeseburger forms in your mind, suddenly you're like, it's tempting, right? It's tempting. Temptation. That motivation then will allow you to act, take a drive to the burger shop and order that burger, and you fulfill that craving. When you fulfill that craving, you get a dopamine hit. Tastes so good, right? A dopamine hit forms, and this starts a cycle again where dopamine hit forms. Now it satisfies your dopamine cravings. Now you've noticed after you eat a cheeseburger, you don't really have too many spontaneous thoughts about a cheeseburger anymore. That's it, it's done. But wait 4, 5, 6 hours, you might have it again. Now, it's not just the fulfillment of cravings, you eating that cheeseburger that can give you dopamine hit. Sometimes even thinking about it can give you the dopamine hit. And this is really the science behind worry. When you worry, for example, you're not taking action on anything. You're just sitting on a couch and worrying about stuff, but worrying is secretly satisfying to you. Why? Because worrying gives you the illusion, gives you the sensation that you are atoning for a fear. You are doing something about a fear. You're at least taking responsibility for something that could happen. Like it feels weird, for example, for you to have, let's say, a big event, a big thing tomorrow, a big meeting tomorrow, and not worry. It feels weird for us to not worry. Worrying somehow feels right, somehow feels justified. And so that worrying or focusing on like true but useless stuff, like worrying, can give you a dopamine hit. And this cycle right here, where the higher you get, the more dopamine hits you get to a certain stimuli, the more dopamine cravings you get. The more of this you get, the more of this you get, right? And so if you are finding yourself to be ADHD, for example, or you're finding yourself to have a lot of spontaneous thoughts, you have a lot of thoughts, your head is always running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. What happens is you have developed a lot of dopamine cravings. So in my program, for example, I have a lot of people who come in as ADHD, but they leave the program having no ADHD. I was someone who thought I had ADHD, but once I kind of learned how to control this, I realized I wasn't suffering with ADHD. It's just that I was living such a high dopamine lifestyle, and I was getting myself addicted to all the wrong things in life that naturally spontaneous thoughts form. And this is also how the addiction cycle works too. And so we use the same principle to get our clients out of their addiction. So you notice there was in video number 1, I showed you this guy who was addicted to a lot of medications, a lot of anti-anxiety meds, etc. And once he did this program, he no longer needed to take the meds because we were able to control this cycle right here. Right? If you control the cycle, we are able to control your addictions. Now, I can go way deeper into this, but basically, you can think about SOC as a stopgap from this cycle from happening. So instead of this cycle happening and giving you more dopamine hits, more dopamine cravings, more spontaneous thoughts, it's really a stopgap. And you can see this in your life when you are, let's say, feeling this strong temptation to something. Sometimes you just trying to just sit there and go, breathe into the temptation and just say, okay, I'm feeling the temptation. Oh, well. Or you voicing it out to someone else in a cathartic way. That is enough to actually remove this motivation and desire. It's enough to remove the spontaneous thoughts sometimes. And I remember smoking was like this too. When I was really addicted to smoking, whenever I would want to smoke, I would go downstairs, talk to my wife and go like, I want to smoke right now. And just me saying that, accepting that in my mind, really removed the intensity of the temptation. Now, of course, again, this can get more advanced conversation, but for now, just make it simple for yourself and realize that SOC is really the stopgap behind this. And also see, if you really master SOC, you reduce spontaneous thoughts. And when you do this, you realize that your life will become a lot simpler and you'll be tempted to do bad things less and less and less and less. So that 100 tennis balls example that I have, you will no longer have 100 tennis balls. Right? Your mind will be a lot more controlled. Now, number 3 is really the importance of building emotional literacy and empathy. I used to be someone, guys, with very low emotional literacy and empathy. Like I had such a hard time relating to others. When someone was telling me how they feel or their story, I just didn't know how to relate. And I was also having a hard time articulating my feelings as well. Because while I had lived a lot of life, I have not taken the time to deeply observe what I think, feel, experience. So just to show you a few stories here. Before COVID, I actually never had a fever in my life, even one time. I never knew what a fever felt like. But during COVID, I had a COVID shot and I had a really bad reaction to it. I had fevers for 2 days and I couldn't even see light. It was that painful. Everything was painful, aches and chills everywhere. I couldn't even get out of my bed. Now, before that event, every time one of my employees were to tell me like, hey, Jeff, I can't come into work today because I'm sick, I would say, yeah, sure, take your day off, whatever it is, because I was supposed to say that. But in my head, I was like, what a pussy. Come on, can't be that bad. But after that event, whenever someone tells me I have a fever, I can relate to that person deeper than I can, and I can articulate that deeper than I can. Why? Because not only did I feel, did I experience that, but I took the time when I was having a fever to deeply observe what I think, feel, and experience during that fever. A lot of people, when they're having a fever, they just say like, I wish this is not happening right now. But nobody really observes that moment, right? The observation is key to building my emotional literacy. In the same way now, every time in my life now, I'm in SOC and I observe my life. I observe my sensations. Whether it's a good day, a bad experience, a good experience, I'm always observing it. Because now, whenever, for example, my partner's telling me about her period and how difficult it feels, I have never had a period before, but I can relate to a lot of parts of my life where I felt something similar. And I can relate and I can articulate that feeling very, very deeply. So now, because I've spent so much time in SOC, I can paraphrase, I can relate, I can understand, and have empathy for my partners, period, even for everything. And SOC is the main mechanism and tool you need to use to improve, to expand your emotional literacy. And as you will see later, emotional literacy is so crucial to creating that safety, admiration, that deep connectedness that you want in your relationship. And when you use SOC to expand your emotional literacy, it goes beyond just understanding, but it's what we call understanding. Like you actually feel it inside of you. You understand it. You're not just logically understanding, you're feeling the understanding, right? That's a very big difference too. So again, let's summarize why SOC is so crucial. Number one is the only way to get out of what we call the purple giraffe paradox, to get out of this cycle that so many men are trapped in. It's the key to instant catharsis and waking up. It's a wake up. It's a wake up call when, let's say, you snap out of your anger. SOC is what actually snaps you out of that moment. It improves emotional literacy over time, empathy, and understanding. It removes blindness and cultivates awareness. So if you look at a lot of my clients and how they finally realize their blindness to certain victim mindsets, their blindness to certain DODs is really SOC. SOC is a state again of true observation where you're really looking at what you are, who you are, what you have, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and you're seeing it objectively without judgment. And it's the best thing again to quiet and focus your mind. If you have ADHD or if you think you have ADHD, try to shift the nature of your dopamine cravings and you'll be shocked as to how little ADHD you actually have. Okay. Now, I want you to think about this 5 and think about how amazing this is for internal shifts. So for example, a lot of people try to shift their emotions, but because they have so little emotional literacy, they don't even know how they feel. They don't know how to talk to themselves. They don't know what the voices look like. They don't know what to shift the voices to because they have so little emotional literacy. And so without this stuff, without SOC, you cannot even make the paradigm shifts that we talk about. Think about the impacts on frameworks, for example, right? Again, if you have emotional literacy, imagine the depth of conversations you can have when you can make the other person feel deeply understood. So just to tell you a story, when I first met my wife on our first date, I was using the frameworks to paraphrase her to go really deep into understanding her love for makeup, her love for skincare, her love for her childhood experiences, her future dreams, etc. And she told me 2 years later, after that first date, she told me, yeah, I was seeing 3 other guys back then and I left them because I never felt so seen. I never felt so deeply understood by someone before, right? So all this stuff is crucial. Now think about this for the 5 pillars. So I'm not going to go to this again, but think about, for example, if you can get yourself to a point where you can wake up. So whenever you feel negative emotions, you can catch yourself right away. You can get out of it, disassociate right away, and shift your emotions right away. I mean, imagine how much safety you can create. Imagine how much safety you can create when you can show your partner, your wife, or whoever you're with that you are someone who's not handicapped in your thinking. You are always focused. Your masculine energy is always focused. Your resolve is always focused. You're always focused on that purpose. I mean, it's very easy for a woman to feel safe with someone like that. But it's really hard. Back then I had ADHD, and I would always use my ADHD as an excuse for everything I did. So if I forgot something, I was distracted, I'm not present, or I'm scatterbrained, I would say, you don't understand that I have ADHD. And I realized that while that's a very convenient excuse, my partner can never feel safe with that. But now, when I am to the point where I don't care if I have ADHD or not, I have learned to overcome it. And I can show her how I can focus my mind, focus on my purpose, even though there's ADHD. Think about how much trust, how much safety that creates. So think about this impacts you in amazing ways in so many levels. Another way it can impact you, again, that example of the ADHD thing, right? a lot of people are blind to that. A lot of people are so blind to how you using your excuse of whatever thing you have as an excuse, you will never create safety with that excuse. And people are also blind to how much safety you can create when you can succeed despite that. But a lot of people never is an SOC long enough to actually see objectively what they're doing and how that leads to them destroying safety or creating safety. Now, we have also talked about why the 5 pillars and all these things here are so crucial to the health of the relationship. If that's not familiar to you, I'm going to leave you a link to my masterclass. Watch that masterclass because you need to understand why these pillars are really the only 5 pillars you need. That's it. We have never had a case in 5,000 plus cases where after fixing the 5 pillars, the relationship was still broken. This is the only ingredients you need. And guys, the fact that no one seems to discuss this concept of SOC in their program and their coaching is the biggest shame in the industry. This is really the most important skill a human can learn, guys. Seriously, I cannot even begin to tell you how crucial this skill is. So let's talk now about how to find that SOC for yourself. Now, I'm not going to overcomplicate this for you because really, SOC is should be very easy to understand conceptually, but it's the experiential mastery of it that's really hard. There is a very vast distance between you understanding SOC and you getting to SOC and you living SOC. In fact, another good word for SOC is really presence and mindfulness, right? And there are many monks who spend all their life trying to get to SOC. The Buddha did this. And some monks don't even get there. But while we can never achieve perfection of SOC, so you can never get to SOC 24 hours a day, we can get pretty down close. We can get closer and closer and closer and closer. And the closer you go, the more zen you'll be. So to understand SOC, you need to understand this notion of subject versus object. And this is key to understanding dissociation and depersonalization. And we'll talk about this later. Dissociation and depersonalization does not mean that you're just pretending your problems doesn't exist, your feeling doesn't exist. Okay, it's a very different meaning to that. But if you are the subject observing an object, by definition, the subject is now and must be separate from the object. For example, if you are right now observing your computer or your phone, so you, the subject, right? You're observing the object, your computer or your phone. By definition, if you're looking at your phone, right? If you're looking at your phone, you must be different than your phone. You must be separate than your phone because a subject, if it's the same, cannot be observing itself, right? It cannot. You must be different. So if you are observing your feelings, events, and thoughts, by definition, you must be a separate entity from those. So when we talk about dissociation, so when you wake up from your anger, for example, are moments when you dissociate. This is really it. To make that dissociation, you just need to observe that thing. So you find that when you observe your feelings, when you observe your anger, by definition, you have created a separation instantly in your head without even trying. And instantly, the implication you're making is that you cannot be the same as the anger you are feeling. You must be some entity, some consciousness that is separate from that. Okay. So again, I don't want you to conceptualize this too much because it's supposed to be a falling thing. If you try to conceptualize sleeping too much, then you're not going to fall asleep. So you just need to fall into it. So basically, like to fall into it, you just need to observe that layer. So there's really 4 layers to observe for you to get to SOC. First, you need to observe that event or circumstance. So let's say, right recently I had a death in the family. So I look at the death and I go, okay, here's the event. Here's the circumstance. This happened. And I'm just trying to observe that objectively without any value judgment, good or bad, should or should not, nothing like that. Just, that is happening. Interesting. That is happening right now. Acceptance, with full acceptance. Once I do that, even when I'm not trying to dissociate, I just did. I just disassociated. Once you observe that layer, observe the feelings. Okay? Feelings. Here's what I feel right now. Don't judge it. Just observe that feeling. I'm feeling really sad. And here's what sadness feels like. I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my groin. I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my head. I feel it in my neck. I feel it in my shoulders. Here's how I'm feeling it. My legs are quivering right now. I'm feeling very demotivated right now. And again, you just made another layer of disassociation. Then you imagine your thoughts. Observe your thoughts. What am I thinking? What are my interpretations that is causing this? What are the voices like? And then you observe the identity. You observe you as a person. You observe your paradigms. You observe your beliefs. You observe your way of life. And when you observe these four in that order, you naturally will get to SOC. And guys, these four layers right here, it's not just some random layers, right? If you look at the previous video, you'll see that paradigms cause your interpretations lead to your feelings lead to your circumstance, and we're just going backwards here, right? So we're going backwards further and further back into finally when we observe all four, we sit at our seat of consciousness. That is a state of pure observation, no judgment. And again, this is conceptually easy, but experientially very hard. Now, getting to, or falling, I should say, falling to, catching and returning is a skill you build. So the first time I did SOC, for example, this took me a long time to get to because I just was not trained. My brain was not trained to observe like that. This difficulty can come in multiple forms. So either, for example, as I'm observing my feelings, I start to judge it, for example. When I start to judge it, I'm out. And to now observe that new judgment I'm judging right now. Here's what I feel about that judging, right? And you can see it keeps branching off like that. So it can be really hard at first because, again, sometimes we also don't know how to visualize. We don't know how to feel. We don't know how to observe. Like we look at our feelings, we don't really know what we're looking at. Sometimes it's very fuzzy, it's very undefined, it's very vague because we're not used to it. But again, it's a skill you build, right? Eventually, you're going to get faster and faster and faster at this. So getting or falling to that state of consciousness will be much faster for you, much more effortless for you, right? But also catching yourself, catching the moment when you fall out of SOC, when you're lost in thought, when you're lost in anger, when you're lost in a moment, those moments will also decrease. So you're able to catch it faster, return to the seat, stay in the seat, and when you're out, catch it faster. So you can see here how over time, you're going to spend less and less time out of SOC. Okay. And that's how we slowly build that skill of being in SOC, falling to SOC, and stay fallen for a longer time. And one thing that is worth mentioning too is that the reason why we say SOC is so crucial to the shift. If you notice, the shift requires you to identify the voices, right? Well, how do you identify the voices? First, you need to understand what you feel and the interpretations, right? The more you do this, the more voices you get, you can ID, you can pinpoint, you can find, the stronger your shifts will get. Interesting. Now, there are 5 very common pitfalls I see with SOC, and I see this with a lot of my clients. And this one says new, but really this even advanced people struggle with this. Okay. So number 1 is value judgments. For example, when you get upset and feel guilty for being out of SOC. For example, right? Let's say you're trying to get to SOC, you're just trying to observe your feelings, and now you find yourself like distracted by something. And now you're angry that like, oh, I shouldn't be out of SOC. I shouldn't be judging this, right? You judging that is you getting further out of SOC. Because again, SOC is about a state of observation and pure acceptance of what you're observing. And this is really how people get so lost sometimes and overwhelmed in SOC. So sometimes when people try SOC for the first time and they observe what they actually feel, what they actually think, what is actually going on in their life, they're actually trying to like look at a demon head on, and they can feel very overwhelmed, very scared. But you can only feel overwhelmed and scared if you are judging the things you're seeing. If you're placing value judgment on the thing you're seeing, so by definition, if you're an SOC, you cannot feel overwhelmed. SOC is supposed to be a very healing, a very cathartic process. Number two is dismissal or suppression. So thinking that SOC is about suppressing or pretending you don't feel something. So again, SOC is about observing the thing you're feeling. So when you are looking at the thing you're feeling and you're saying like, I'm fine despite it, right? You are either suppressing or dismissing or adding value judgments to it, right? You're not an SOC in that particular point in time. So again, SOC is about looking at your demons head on and not being scared of it. It's just observing it. So for example, a great analogy of this is when you're watching a movie. When you see a character getting killed in a movie, do you feel like as if someone died in your real life? Of course not. You know it's a movie. You have disassociated yourself. This is a movie. So being an SOC is seeing your life and observing your life in that lens where you're not so lost in it. You're not so identified with it. You will have that layer of separation there. Okay. Number three, using it in a silo. This is a dangerous one. So again, the cycle we want is SOC, shift, and then SOC. So for example, I see a lot of people who go to therapy to vent, basically. They talk about their childhood traumas. They talk about why they are the way they are. They talk about, let me understand why I feel certain things right now, which is great. It's a great start. It's a great start because you're SOCing, you're accepting, you're understanding your feelings. But if you just accept your feelings, but you do nothing to shift it, it's not very helpful, right? Number four, overthinking SOC. This is when you ask yourself, like, am I an SOC? Am I an SOC? So if you're trying to over-conceptualize SOC, you ironically will never be an SOC. Again, you fall into SOC. So just like sleeping, the more you try to conceptualize sleeping or ask yourself, am I sleeping? Am I sleeping? Am I sleeping? Guess what? The moment you ask if you're sleeping is the moment you're not sleeping. And not using SOC as a lifestyle, right? You want to get to the point where this becomes a walking and living meditation. So just to end this, I know this can sound pretty difficult to do right now, but this is why in our program, we have a lot of discussions around SOC, allowing you guys to feel it. The way we structure the program is allows you to feel SOC and get to SOC and make sure you're not going to SOC and falling into the pitfalls. You see a lot of discussions about it. You see a lot of people getting to it. You see a lot of group calls about it. And this is something we hold very dearly because this is such crucial foundations for everything else in terms of learning skills for your relationship. And that's it for this video, guys. If you want to go deeper again into this, we have a masterclass that's about an hour and a half long. You can join the masterclass by clicking the link below this video. At the end of that masterclass, we'll show you how to apply for the program if you're interested in applying. But for now, guys, hope that was helpful for you guys. And in the next video, we'll talk about antithetic filter, antithetic thinking, and why SOC is not only crucial for antithetic thinking and why and how and what antithetic thinking is as well. Okay, guys, so I'll see you in part 4. For now, keep rocking it.